yes, hit that like, everybody. We're about to get started. All right. Let's go. Where's that? And let's fix this, and we're live on Instagram. That's all working now. Okay, good. Excellent. And I think we're up everywhere. Yes. Yes. Right. Oh, I should fade the music, shouldn't I? All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Good morning. Mike is on. You're here. I'm here. It's sorry, I had the stream ending coming up. I'm sorry. I was tricking everybody. It was an April Fool's test. That's what I was doing. Yeah, sure. Hope you guys are having a fantastic Monday. It's President's Day, so salute to Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and shit, at this point, I feel like we all should get off Nixon's case compared to what's going on. I would argue this is the longest day one ever. Donald Trump made a bunch of promises that his first day as president on day one. On day one, he was going to start and grocery prices would come down, and the Ukraine war would end, and the Gaza situation would be over. and there would be a two-state solution, and everybody would have a nap where someone put a daisy in their butthole while they slept, and they woke up all happy. This was the story we were all sold as a bill of goods. Now, a lot of us weren't buying. A lot of us know a timeshare scam when we see it. We know a multi-level marketing scheme posing as a political movement when we see it. Some people don't. Some people were caught off guard by this. I would say like these folks. Unfortunately, MAGA Indian Americans should have seen this coming by Nitish Pawar. Yeah, maybe. I just got to say, when you're added to the Doge team and then you're kicked off the Doge team the same time your partner in the Doge team does a Nazi salute, it should be a sign. Should be what we would call a red flag, as it were. Wouldn't you agree? Chat room. By the way, Tara Dublin will rock the second hour with us this morning, and it's just you and I in the first hour. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us, you and I. So, obviously, egg prices aren't going to come down anytime soon. Also, hi, chat room, because of this thing right here, avian flu. You know, all the reasons we said were going to be a problem. Remember all that? Remember all that business? Remember when we were telling people, hey, this doesn't really have anything to do with gas prices, because how fast you get a rotten egg someplace doesn't really matter. You can't run a car on cheap gas into a chicken and make eggs pop out. It doesn't quite work that way. It's because of avian flu, and with assholes in charge of the CDC and the NIH and the FDA and the EPA. I'm guessing that standard is going to go low and stay low for the foreseeable future. Now, blue states will, and their health departments, will be making up a car-sized chicken. That's a good question, Becca. We'll have to check that out. I mean, I think the big question is, if it takes a chicken and a half a day and a half to lay an egg and a half, how long does it take a monkey with a wooden leg to kick all the seeds out of a dill pickle? These are the great questions we ask in life. But the reality, I guess, the real world implications of Trump's, kind of sledgehammer, bull in a china shop approach is going to, it is already, I mean, we're seeing a bit of buyer's remorse, but nowhere near what we're going to see over the next couple of months, as it really starts to sink in that not only is this stuff Trump's fault, his moves are actually causing it, but it was bad. It's really bad. And obviously, for all those who are questioning whether or not to get off of Twitter, even the guy who started it is saying that's everybody's bailing out. Please leave. Please stop it. Please stop being on there. Don't. No X, no TikTok. Why do you keep doing that? Why would you? You think there's not other outlets? You can't. Have you ever gotten caught in a YouTube short hole? It's the same thing. Only I suppose you can get off the wheel when it's a YouTube short, whereas with TikTok you can't. You just sit there, just blindly scrolling through. I don't know why I'm watching this garbage, but I'm horrified at humanity. Mission accomplished. So, apparently, there is going to be Blue Sky is adding a little. They're calling it Flash, or I guess you're going to flash people now on. Oh dear. They're adding flashes of images to create kind of an Instagram style addition to Blue Sky as a function. So, yeah, it's good times. Yeah. So why do you have to go? Why in the world? Why in the ever-loving hell would you have to be on X for any reason? Are there not enough people to interact with? Also, are you not up to here with bots? Are you not? I don't get it. And by the way, I'm live streaming on Rumble right now. Let's go check something out real quick. I'm going to show you guys something. See if I can get this stupidity. Okay, here you go. Now who else is Let's see. Yeah. Okay. The usual dipshits are on here. I am not signed into this garbage, so I'm just on it on this particular thing. Let me show you something. May I? Come with me. Join. Gather around. Come here. Come here. Come here. Francine, listen. Yeah. By the way, this image makes more sense than I think anybody cares to admit. And it's like feds flee DC after a mass purge. I don't know what that means. It's weird. Him driving pink slip, whatever you're fired. Like these are all, Benny Johnson's probably got the best AI thumbnail game on the right wing because they're constantly making these. Like that's they jumped on this early. Everybody else is. He's still doing the collage of outrage. This is Francine. Remember in Ghostbusters when he drags Dan Aykroyd by the ear. Come here, Francine. He calls him Francie. I think that might be his middle name, but we don't know. Anyways, or it might be some reference that I wasn't old enough to get when I was a kid. So, right. Why can't Elon fix X and then steal from Fort Knox? I'm not kidding. Again, he's very good at the virtual, not very good at the specific. Okay, so here's all their live categories. They've stolen this from Twitch. They built this kind of thing. Okay. Then Barstool's words. Okay. And then there's a lot of they're trying to take the gaming thing. There's crypto is a big part of this. Look at this. You a clown. Memes are ruining the bull run. God damn it. Why can't everybody stop ruining my pretend money with gifts that upset me? What? 1% adoption, but a 100x Bitcoin opportunity is just beginning. Yes, very exciting. Good for you. H- is fueling retail apps. It's sharing. I don't know, whatever. Crypto for the rest of us. Is the patient dead? This doesn't look very good. Okay, these are all the live ones. These are playlists. And then, where is it? Yeah, there we go. This is what keeps Rumble afloat, ladies and gentlemen. Let me come here. This, more than anything, free speech be damned. Outlets for what have you, I don't know, Rusty Trombone and Beanie Johnson and whatever. This is what pays for the rest of it. This is Power Slap is owned by the same company that does UFC, and it's way cheaper. It's basically just like if you could isolate the knockouts or something on UFC and just show clips of it. It's like for people who fast forward through the dialogue in old porn movies, you're just like, okay, I get it. That's this for UFC. So Power Slap is a bunch of, God bless them, dopey rednecks tricked into embarrassing themselves on international television, and it's I don't know. It's if arm wrestling is too complicated. And these guys whack each other, and they try to get each other right on the chin button, or like on the second, on the like the ear spot right here. Okay, so there's 3 places. You want to knock somebody out? You want to one punch knock them out? The first one is right here on the chin, just the button. If you can, right there on the chin, and drive their jaw back. Their jaw has to be slack. If they've got a bite in, if they've got a mouth guard in, and they're biting down, their jaw will be tense and it won't quite work. But if the jaw is slack, if you hit that, it pops back into it, and that's what knocks them out. The other 2 are here and here. These are if you hit them on the button, these are the 2 points that kind of get compressed at the same point and make your head go all wobbly and you fall over. So this hitting somebody right here, where their jaw kind of connects to the neck just below, like the earlobe right here. Remember this, slow is accurate and accurate is fast. Yes, YouTube, the vagus nerve, exactly. But it's for the who's at home, they're not going to be able to go like, okay, I got to aim for the vagus. No, just anyway, right here, right here, right here, okay? And the thing you got, again, the jaw has to be loose first. So a lot of times, if you're trying to set somebody up for a knockout blow, they either have to be exhausted, which is when, besides like when a boxer puts their hands down, they start getting tired, their jaw starts to get a little slack as well. You don't have a bite. And it's one of the reasons why Mike Tyson always chewed his mouth guard. He was always biting on it, right? You'd always see him chewing. Okay, the reason he would do that is because it would tense up the side of his face that was forward. So if he's chewing on that, it never goes slack. So if you hit it, the muscle is clenched and you can't wobble his jaw and make him pass out. Does that work for everybody? Is that a good lesson for the day? Okay. So what you want to do is usually pop somebody in the stomach or the solar plexus, and then when they go, huh, that's the second one. So that's the 1-2 punch you'd always hear, like a straight punch or a jab and then a roundhouse. That's how you do it. That's why that works. Is because when you knock the breath out of somebody, their jaw kind of relaxes, and then, okay. This is just dipshits standing there, and you're not allowed to move. You have to put your hands behind your back while another dude slaps your face and tries to, if you look right here, this guy's got an open palm, but look at this guy right here. Kind of see how he's turning his hand this way? Okay, what he's really trying to do is, instead of smacking the guy, which is what you're supposed to do, he's turning his hand over and trying to use the blade edge of his hand to hit the guy right on the button. See that right there? That's what he's trying to do. And there's rules about this, whatever. Okay, I'm just telling you how stupid this is. I'm trying to explain to you why this whole thing is just like these assholes setting themselves up to get whacked right in the vagus nerve, right, to get them so they can film the knockout. This is all. This is like straight to the knockout. Power slap is the money shot compilation of UFC. It's totally stupid. And its viewers pretty low. I mean, here's 60,000. This is the middleweight. There are women who do it. It's kind of gross, especially the like featherweight women. Like, it's just a bunch of slapping. The middleweight women knock each other out. It's gross. It looks gross. It's gross. This one's 4.2 million views. Okay, see that? That looks like it would be a runaway hit. Jesus, that's more hits than I don't know, CNN gets on its YouTube channel. Or they're fake views. They're largely just bot farms paid to crank up this so that they can sell the idea that they have ad rev to companies that don't know they're buying these things. And they buy them in countries that are totally opaque. And you can look at their analytics and see where the shit is coming from. But this is this is the stuff that keeps the Benny Johnsons of the world and the Russell Brands of the world afloat. And these are the picks. These are the things they want you to watch that are paid for. There's Bongholio. I think he's an investor in this. There's Bannon, Tim Pool, all these dipshits. There's Steven Crowder. And they're all subsidized by fake power slap views. And again, the number of views that they're allegedly getting on these things, honestly, it's similar to the tenant media trick. Like, we'll pay you $100,000 to do a video about this thing, but we're really paying you to do the stuff that we want you to do on your regular channel. We're just subsidizing. Now you can do the stuff on your channel for free. You don't even have to worry about money. So you can talk about the stuff we want you to talk about for free. But we paid you to do these videos, right? Okay. So that's all this shit. Yeah, this Viva Frey dickhead and yeah. Let's see, and a bunch of these, many of them I don't like. They don't chart, because even if they have big numbers, like if you stack these numbers against the YouTube channel, they seem kind of reasonable, but they're largely fake or singular to that. They're in a smaller fishbowl, and if you watch 1 second of it, they get a count for the entirety of it. And the other way that they jack things up on this is that if you roll over some of these and you've got it on autoplay, it starts to play. It counts as a view even if it doesn't get, even if you don't watch the thing, even if it started rolling like a Netflix. Like if Netflix, when it auto plays the first couple of seconds or the ad for a show, if it counted that as a view for the show itself, like you watch the whole episode, that would obviously be ridiculous. But that's basically the business model of Rumble. And all of this right-wing stuff is kept afloat by Power Slap, which again is stacked on top of other shit. So there you go. Just thought I'd let you know. It's a little inside scoop on that business. But I'm up on there right now, but I really don't. I mean, just because it's one of the channels available on my Restream, and I've got I'm only on 4 and I've got 8 or 10 that are available. The problem is that most of the channels are like, why bother? Right? That said, let's see. You wish you never knew. Which part? The part about the Power Slap, or just the entirety of the farce of Rumble, as it were? There's a bunch of that. All right. Now, there's a bunch of, hold on, let me see if there's, yeah, there we go. Hold on. So what have you been doing? Yeah, it slapped her. Oh, thanks, Cosmic Rose. Yeah, I should be there just so they can see the show, just so they know, at the very least, so that they can see stuff like, let's see. Let's see. How about this? Like, we should just do, this is dedicated to people over on Rumble. There is absolutely no other reason. Facebook is weird. Okay, hold on one second. Let's see if I can fix that. It says sending data. It could simply be that I'm being shadow banned. Nice work, Zuckerberg. After I defended you against the hold on. You can't, let's see. You can renew. Okay, confirm. Okay. Let me turn this back on. Hold on and wait till it ends, and then send it back again and try to kick it on, and then hopefully it will. Yeah, Facebook's just being weird. Sorry about that. Not quite sure. It's on their end, though. It's not me. So, but I feel like, this is dedicated to the people over there at Rumble. I mean, who wouldn't pay to see, Power Slap between these two dudes? Huh? Huh? I guess the Trump friendship, let's see. Mark Epstein told the New York Post, here's a direct quote: "If I had said what I know about both candidates, they'd have to cancel the election." This was on Trump and Hillary Clinton, I guess. Well, I got to be Bill or whatever. Wild stuff. But Mark Epstein said he didn't know what information his brother was referring to. And while Trump was mentioned in both old court documents and the batches in 2024, there's no smoking gun. Well, it's debatable. Trump has repeatedly denied any Epstein-related wrongdoing. What do you think? He's going to admit to it? Yet question about the president's ties to Epstein persists as the convicted sex offender is a conspiracy figure. Here's a running list. This post has been updated throughout. Where is it? Why is it stop there? The running list. Look at this. Is it cut off, or does it pick up after the... Nope. Faces exile from 365-year-old Royal Society scientific institution over his political behavior. Well, okay. And how about he just has to come in and compete in any of the math competitions? I suffer infinite indignities on platform my own. Ex-owner Elon Musk tried to boo friggity who. And notice that seems weird to me that there it is. Here we go. Continue reading. Now it kicks in. Oh wait, that's the Elon Musk one. That's not even this one. Why would this article be cut off all of a sudden? It's just a little quote thing right here, and then that's it. Updated throughout. That seems to be Everything we know seems to end right here. That's not sketchy at all. What's happening? Leon. All right. But the picture should be enough. I don't need another reason not to like Donald Trump, ever. And if you're like, but other people, yeah, fuck them too. That's how it works. I don't care. Why in the world would I care? If it turned out anybody was hanging around with that dude for any length of time and playing footsie with him, and they're like, you used to like that guy. Yeah, used to. That's okay. Right? What? Like, I'm sure there were people who thought Danny Masterson was funny on that 70s show. They're allowed to go, oh, fuck that, now, right? They're allowed. Seems, right? Dancing Dog 66 is probably like Parler and Nest of Vipers. That would be, yeah, I don't even know, does Parler still exist? Jesus. Like, I mean, that's got to be yeah, I guess so. What a, it's just, I think I can figure out why their audience is down, though. They're so inclusive. I'm just guessing that if your Parler, this isn't the stock photo that your target audience will respond to the most. I didn't come over here. What are you, DEI and people in here? They can join. Anybody can join. Is that how it works? Unmute the future. Good Lord. The new era of digital media has been reawakened. Oh, okay. They're apologizing after the data leak that took whatever 70 terabytes of their user data and dumped it on the web. The community where every voice is unmuted, and together we build a culture of freedom and authenticity. Go look at them from the Apostle Paul. Vindicating Trump is now streaming. There's Dinesh D'Souza. He's a big Tucker. Parler is free to post on their own site. The Amy Robbins is trying to sell make Dallas great again. Go look at the moon. The moon will be near as close as the point on Earth. Okay, whatever. They obviously that's the harmless stuff. There's plenty of harmless stuff. Your feed, your way. Yeah, you know, just the Parler's just a site for dudes who like vinyl, man. It's not a repository for right-wing psychopaths and stuff who are trying to figure out a way to talk without the feds hearing their conversations after or leading up to January 6th, rather. So this is how it works, though. I don't know if you guys are familiar with social media, but apparently you create your profile, and then you follow your favorite friends and creators, and you customize your feed, and then you post and engage. It's an all-new way of doing things. It's so cutting edge. It's not at all exactly like everything else. It's not at all like a kind of a shit version of Twitter at all, overrun with like maggots that are like too rude for Twitter. It's a holiday. I can go on some of these. What was the other one? Parler and Gab. That was the other one. Hold on, chat room. We got to check out what happened to Gab too. Is Gab still around? Yeah, there it is. Gab.com. Gab Social. Gab. This one just goes straight to the site. Like you can sign in, but it doesn't give a shit. Like this one just goes straight into the timeline. Top pose should the United States cut off foreign aid until we get out of debt? Should we? I'm asking the tough questions. And it's got a Doge thing at the bottom of it. I'm guessing it's a rhetorical question. I'm sorry to inform you that the Jewish Family Service Center, an NGO that helped facilitate illegal immigrants in San Diego by providing food, housing, and other assistance to illegal aliens, the U.S. taxes, had to close its doors this week. More than 100 employees were laid off. The Jewish Family Services, family service, that's different. That has to do with, it depends on if you're using British slang or American. Will no longer help illegal aliens enter the U.S. to, okay, so this is just where like anti-Semitism goes to park. Free Hellcat, something. I was halfway joking, but good Lord, I wasn't expecting to see stuff like this crop already. Wow, wow. With the standard, most members of Congress should be bunking with them. Anyway, I don't know. How many guns should a normal person have? About 5. That sounds like a gun enthusiast has 15. Okay, whatever. They're random stuff. I mean, the details came out, but what who needs those? Just take tweets and repost them elsewhere, and that's content. Oh, look, somebody's like clip topping the turd nugget. Okay, Doge, congratulations, Loot, for getting the American taxpayer trillions dollars back so far. Nice work. That must mean we don't have to pay any taxes this year, as you can apply that instead. Give us our fucking money back. Well, I mean, obviously, I guess is he yelling at Trump? I don't know what that, like, what's the complaint? I mean, you're going to have to, hey, sorry, you're going to have to pay for the tax break. Ted, I don't know. I guarantee you're not making anything off of Spotify, even with your catalog. So the tax break he's setting up is not going to benefit you. It's going to benefit working musicians. Ouch. Oh, shit. Damn. I just want to see how many people love God with a firm yes. Okay, never mind the fact that this is filled in. This is artificial, and they just took whatever was in here and cut it out. And I guess this is just. I don't know. I want to know what this used to say before they were like, we got to make this godly, y'all. This, like, where they they misspelled titles and they used a lowercase I and it said titties and she's pointing at it and laughing and stuff. We got to take that down, y'all. We cannot have that, all right? Why peer review is the death of innovative science? Do we dare?
People talk glibly about science. What is science? People coming out of a university with a master's degree or a PhD, you take them into the field, and they literally don't believe anything unless there's a peer-reviewed paper. It's the only thing they accept.
Yeah, I mean, that's because anecdotal direct evidence, common sense about some things, you can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, you're literally standing in front of someone looking directly at that. What are you going to do? Say, like, looking at this, they tell everyone that there's a drought. I don't see drought conditions. I just see a lot of dust and dead trees and no animals and a dry riverbed, but I don't see a drought. They don't believe there's a drought. They believe there's a drought because they read it in some paper somewhere. I'm standing right here. This isn't a drought. It's just dry land.
And you say to them, but let's observe, let's think, let's discuss. They don't do it.
Well, they would. I mean, the idea would be that peer-reviewed papers are about a lot of people reviewing those things and discussing them. Isn't that how you do a peer review? Isn't that, in many ways, a form of discussion? Okay.
It's just, is it in a peer-reviewed paper or not? That's their view of science. I think it's pathetic.
Okay, again, adorable. Nobody ever said that to him. Nobody was standing there while he pointed at something and goes, see that plant right there? You can use that plant if you rub it on your fanny. You can get rid of a rash if you need to. I know. If you rub that on your fanny, it won't itch at all anymore. Well, I would like to see some documentation on that. I'm not just going to rub a random weed on my ass just because you say so. This might be a hazing or a trick or something. No, you just take it. Look right at it. Does that look like a friendly little plant? Yeah, I mean, it looks like a weed. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's just a fucking... How am I supposed to fucking know? I don't know. Can I at least look at a book where somebody's drawn pictures of? No. Yeah, look, not all learning is in a fucking book, okay? So what you're going to do, you're going to take that weed, you're going to rub it on your ass, and the itch will go away. Well, I got to tell you, my ass does not itch currently. So pass, I guess. You think it... what'd you do? Read a paper that tells you your ass doesn't itch? No. No, I mean, I like, you're going to go on anecdotal evidence? No, this is personal data. This is not anecdotal. Anecdotal happened to somebody else. Pick up the, rub your ass on it. No, I'm not going to do it. Fuck me. All right, I owe you $5. He didn't fall for it. I knew it. What happens if you lose? Now I got to rub it on my ass. I'm going to be walking funny for a month.
Gone into universities as bright young people. They come out of them brain dead. Not even...
I just, you know how bad I want, like a rhinoceros to just... like, they come out here, they think it's not safe. They're like, well, they're water buffalo and all that kind of... You know, they see a sign that says, beware of crocodile. And they're like, I should probably be aware of crocodile. Where's your sense of adventure, you tit?
Knowing what science means. They think it means peer-reviewed papers, etc. No, that's academia. And if a paper is peer-reviewed, it means everybody thought the same, therefore they approved it. An unintended consequence is that when new knowledge emerges, new scientific insights, they can never, ever be peer-reviewed.
What? Let's, real quick, let's hear that again.
Scientific insights, they can never, ever be peer-reviewed.
I gotta say, I've been talking about nuclear diamond batteries for a while. It's pretty new technology. Plenty of papers on it. Many of them peer-reviewed. Basically, because that's the status before you get funding to experiment on it in the second tier. So here's what happens. You do your experiment. You venture into this new area of science, or you try to specify something that's eluded people before. You write a paper, you put it up, it gets peer-reviewed, and a bunch of people go, yeah, that checks out. He's not fudging his numbers. I did his math. I looked at it. I reviewed it as a peer in the field, and I went, oh, okay. Yeah, I can see where they're going with this. We'll see if it works out, but that seems to be generally acceptable. It's peer-reviewed. And then they can go to people and go, I need funding for a bigger study. Because I'm not just talking out of my ass. The rest of these folks, checked my math, essentially. Also, I don't want to hear shit from anyone who's using an old rubber band that's rotted away as a hat band. For God's sake, man.
So we're blocking all new advances in science.
Yeah, I know, and there's certainly, especially in the era of computer science, and nanotechnology and quantum computers and that kind of, there's just been no new science lately. I don't know when it stopped. This is somebody watched this on Gab, I presume, if there's anybody still on there, and went, fucking, yeah, that's what it is, man. You can't, we got this. I can stick this thing up my ass, cures everything, and they won't even let me just because there's a horse on the box. You get some, I go in there just because it's got a little pair of horses on the box. I can't inject fenbendazole and ivermectin up my butthole to cure stuff. Why? Because science says it's got a horse on the box? Is that why? Fuck, man. It's, you know what it is? The earth is flat and we are surrounded by an ice wall, and they're just trying to keep us from getting over the ice wall where paradise is. All right, okay. Thanks, man. Fuck you. That's science. The whole world is so flat that if you fire a bullet, the only thing that will stop it, because there's no such thing as gravity, is a young body. So what we're trying to do is make sure if you're going to shoot in any direction, make sure it's towards an old folks' home, because apparently they can dodge it because they've got matrix powers. So fucking stupid.
There are big advances. If you look at the breakthroughs in science, almost always they don't come from the center of that profession. They come from the fringe. The finest candle makers in the world couldn't even think of electric lights.
I would argue there's no financial incentive for them to do that in the first place because they would put themselves out of a job, I guess. The finest candle makers, probably too busy at the Vatican making votives for the fucking Pope. Why would the finest guy? You know who would really think of an electric light bulb? The shittiest candle maker. God damn it, fucking wax, and I hate these things, and they smell. I don't know if it's the wick or whatever. Mine all smell all fuely. There's nothing pure about any of this shit. You know what we need? If we could just put the candle in a fish bowl so that I don't have to smell it. This is why anecdotal evidence is stupid.
They don't come from within. They often come from outside the breaks. We're going to kill ourselves because of stupidity.
You think he's not? There's not even a moment of irony. Why would I like and subscribe and share that absolute idiocy? That's the wonderful kind of stuff you can find on Gab, ladies and gentlemen. Today's show was brought to you by Don't Go There and Safeguard. Good for what doesn't ail you, because as Cat Williams says, if you got a headache, 2 aspirin are just right. But you have 500 of those things, and it'll be the last headache you ever have. And that the same thing for fenbendazole. This is by the way, for those of you that don't know, this is a kind of running joke. I was at this I don't know if it's not even called like really an outlet store. It's this Mac Bids, and there's another one, Nellis Auctions, where people who send things back to Amazon or whatever, and they're just like, yeah, we can't restock this or whatever. So they just buy these giant pallets of this shit, and then they auction them off if they're, bigger items, and then they sell the crap that's in boxes to stuff or whatever. And so along with a bunch of Trump flags that were in these bins because people were kicking them off. And by the way, there were a few Harris signs as well. I don't know why, I guess it was the people who were selling stuff as opposed to volunteering or whatever. Like the online stuff you'd buy, instead of getting it from the campaign, you could buy it on Amazon, those kind of things. So there were a ton of these Trump flags in there, but there were also a bunch of these in the same bin. And I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think that's an accident. Sorry, this is see-through because it's kind of green. This is equine dewormer. There you go. Now, according to Joe Rogan, ivermectin and fenbendazole apparently helped him get over COVID. And what that tells you is Joe Rogan had worms. You see, when you have worms, when you've got a parasite or a parasitic infection of any sort, it's hell on your immune system. It's a running problem. Sorry, that was a terrible way of putting that, and I apologize, and it won't happen again.
Thank you, Doc. You ever serve time?
So Rogan, when he tells you that ivermectin helped him, it's because it's him admitting he had worms. And he had a massive untreated case of worms. He had worms really bad. And anybody who's like, ivermectin helped me, like it may have eased the impact on your immune system while you have COVID or any other disease, where if you think of it as like RAM, you got a limited RAM on your computer, and your immune system's like RAM, and if it's using it to fight off a bunch of other stuff, a lot of times you'll have a diminished immune system to fight off smaller infections and that kind of stuff. Stress will often do that, right? So if you have worms or a parasitic infection, it's going to take some of the RAM from your immune system, logically. Those white blood cells and those, your lymph nodes are going to be working overtime to clear out the toxins created by the parasites and that kind of stuff, by the worms in your system. And so I guess theoretically, if you had worms and you got COVID and you took something for the worms, you'd feel better because you'd just have the COVID, and if your body was relatively able to fight it off, you'd have more RAM available. That make sense? All right. That I would argue is just anybody who says that ivermectin helped them is just admitting they had a massive untreated case of worms. He used to make people eat worms on Fear Factor. Yeah, and lie in them and all that other stuff. I mean, I don't know what his diet for a while was, if he went through a raw meat phase or a raw pork phase or something like that. I wouldn't doubt it, because, he surrounds himself with people who are like, I don't know, try it. I don't know, shouldn't I read a peer-reviewed paper on eating raw pork? Like what? I don't know, like the Old Testament? What? Yeah, like that's the reason why Jews don't eat pork. It's not because God hates you eating pigs. He doesn't give a shit. Obviously, he doesn't mind if you eating them in another part of the world. It's just that if you don't cook it right, so if that's the only thing that's around, and the rabbis are like, everybody's dying because they keep eating pork. They're like, we can't tell them not to. It's the only thing they have to eat. And you're like, better than nothing. You're like, well, tell them God hates it, and then they'll stop. You think that'll work? I don't know. What else? What other choice do we have? All right. So that was what it was. It was an anti-trichinosis movement by the religious figures at the time. And it might have been the first time where they actively made a choice to lie to the faithful about a specific aspect of life, saying God told them not to, when they knew it was really a medicine thing, but that the people were uneducated and wouldn't understand the medical aspect of it. Or, by the way, to be completely frank, it could just be that they were stupid themselves. And they're like, obviously, we're not supposed to eat this shit because half the people that eat it fucking croak, and it's gross and it's terrible. And so, what is it? Every time we eat those things, we're fine. Every time we eat those things, a bunch of people, you know what? God obviously hates that. Okay? I think we can all agree. I mean, there hasn't been a peer-reviewed paper on it, but, if I do say so myself. You have to explain this to so many people? Yeah. Now, they must have done it before that. Well, that's the thing, too. It might have been carried on from another religion, right? It wasn't necessarily the Jews that came up with it. It could have been any of the, the early Arabic tribes, many of whom would come to the same conclusion, right? Before they were summarily wiped out by the Muslims. That's not good. Hold on one second. That's funny. Hold on. Sorry, something just came up and I nerded for a moment. I apologize. This is what you want to see. You want to see the laser pointer that affects my brain. This is what happens if a news story comes by like this. Solid state batteries are in trailblazer mode. What's holding them up? I don't know. What's holding them up? They shouldn't be held up. That would be bad. We should have these by now. God damn it. I can probably, as much as politics eats up a good portion of my media diet, long term, the reality is that we are staring down the barrel of an entire shift in human life on the planet in the next 5 years. Oh yeah, right, yeah. Nobody loved me, everybody hates me, think I'll go eat worms. Long, thin, skinny ones, short, fat, juicy ones, watch them wriggle and squirm. You bite their heads off, suck their guts out, throw their skins away, and nobody knows how well we'll live on worms 3 times a day. Long, thin, skinny ones slip down easily, big, fat, juicy ones stick. Hold your head back, squeeze their tail, and the juice goes click, click, click. Nobody loves me, everybody hates me, I'll go eat worms. There you go. There you go, Andrea. Clip that shit. So, it's a little Brack slipping out because we love him. So, Solid-state batteries could enable 600-mile EVs and reduce fires. Now, battery makers are racing to get them over the finish line. This, and by the way, this is partly the shift in why some of the funding on chargers that Trump's trying to take away won't make a fucking impact at all, because the market in Europe is growing. Obviously the Chinese market is a farce, but it is spreading through the rest of Southeast Asia. And again, it's a lot easier to create electricity through a myriad of ways than it is to dig up oil out of the ground and turn it into gasoline, right? And Trump is like, Parler, what we were saying about Parler is a great analogy for like Trump's business sense. So Trump creates, Trump Media Group or whatever, and creates Truth Social when there are already 5 social media companies that sprung up outside of Twitter before Musk even bought Twitter and turned it into a cesspool that cater to right-wing nut jobs. So the market's oversaturated. There's a bunch of these assholes who are maintaining 5 accounts on these half-ass sites, including his, right? So he's way late to the fucking game. And he's done this before. He goes into a saturated market and tries to jump on a bandwagon that has already lost a wheel, right? And there's an element of this where he's trying to reignite oil and gas in the United States when there's already going to be a glut because of the downturn in the Chinese market. And there's Tara Dublin in the background. All right. Joining me in just a second. But he has this habit of coming in way late on stuff and thinking he's invented the game. And the switch towards EVs is, Biden was right when he was talking the last 3 months of his presidency, where he's going, nobody's going to put this toothpaste back in the tube. They're not going to undo this. They might hamstring it for a while, or they might put American industries behind. They might slow down American growth in these industries, but they're not going to stop it. And let me do something real quick. Let me go in right here, and I think I can bring in our dear friend and compatriot, the Tara Dublin, who does indeed rock. There she is. Hello.
I don't see you.
Oh, sorry.
I just
yes.
see me.
There you go. How about this?
Hey,
there you go.
hi. There's my friend.
Yeah.
Hi,
Thank you.
how
Yes.
are you?
I'm
Happy
spectacular.
Not my President's Day.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we can celebrate Jimmy Carter today, and Joe Biden, and Obama.
This is why we brought back OG for today. There's a lot of housekeeping to take care of before we get to the garbage fire. If you wouldn't mind a moment.
Sure.
Of that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, firstly, I would love everyone to sign up for my YouTube, because I posted a video that was really important to me, which has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with taking a break from politics. My beloved Lobar Carell had our Valentine's show on Friday night, and it's an all Elton John show.
Nice.
And so we opened with Tiny Dancer. And when you open a show with Tiny Dancer, there's nowhere else to go but continuing upwards. And it was amazing. And we had a wonderful time. And there was 2.5 hours of our lives where we embraced community and sang. And it was beautiful. Also, I was on stage and I told a story at one point. So thank you. And so
Elton John
I'll
story?
get a video of at some point. A what?
An Elton John story?
Not an Elton. No.
Okay.
A Valentine's related story about how terrible dating is in Portland and therefore everywhere else too. But
okay.
I have this story that I tell about when I still tried to date, or what I call the optimistic years, and encountered the worst of the worst because Portland. And so I started collecting these idiosyncratic things that happened to me when I would date people. Men.
Yeah.
And then I just collected it in a pre-screening questionnaire that I would share with potential suitors to make sure I didn't leave my house accidentally for anybody. And so the list just grew over the decade of my 40s. And now that I've fully given up, now I just use it to impart wisdom on my single sisters who still have active libidos, bless their hopeful little hearts. And so it's just like, here's a list of things to ask somebody before you even decide to take off your yoga pants and put on something with a defined waistband. So,
Okay.
and it starts off innocuously enough. Are you a musician? Are you a chef? Are you a musician and a chef? And then it goes on from there to things
Wait,
that
are
just
those
happen to be
positives or
important.
negative?
They're all negatives. They're all like, get this out of here. I don't want this. This is screening for, do you have diseases? Do you live in a van? Do you have roommates you're fucking? Do you, like shit like that. Have you ever
And
borrowed
being
money
a
from
chef
a
and a
woman and
musician?
then not paid her back? Just like just make sure you go through all of the things that matter to you so that you don't leave the house for the wrong person. Anyway,
Okay.
it kills. It kills every year because
Sure.
the final one, and I'm not spoiling it really because I've told it repeatedly, but the last one on the list, and again, this comes from real life. I didn't need to embellish. The last question on the questionnaire is, do you believe Hillary Clinton killed a man named Ben Ghazi? Because that happened to me. So, yeah. So, if you would take a moment, those of you who are here and in the chat, please sign up for, hey, look, it's Duke. Please sign up for follow me and subscribe and whatever on the YouTube. And please take 5 minutes of your day or 6 minutes or however long and enjoy the exuberance and the joy and get a
Right.
smile on your face because you're allowed to do that. And as our friends Frangela have let us know, they are not allowed to steal our joy. They're not.
Nope.
As they're apparently allowed to steal our private financial information, but not our joy. So,
Right.
So again, retain what you can. But seriously, I wish with all of my heart that every single community had a low bar corral so that they could go together and sing and do group therapy, like I call it. And someday we're going to get you there. And we will group sing Van Halen. We will.
Yeah.
For you specifically.
Well, if you
but
ever
it
do
is a joy.
Yeah.
It is joy personified. And you cannot go to a low bar corral and leave in a bad mood. And I promise you, we're not a cult, even though we do have cool T-shirts. So, and hats. We have hats now. But anyway, I just wanted to start with a positive rather than immediately jump into the garbage fire.
Here's what I would have done at the low bar. If you'll indulge me for just 1 second, this is what I would have done.
Please.
At the Elton John Low Bar Corral. This is what I've done. She packed my bags last night.
We would have loved that.
0
Maybe
hour.
next year.
9 a.m.
9 a.m.
And I'm gonna be as a cake by then.
And if you don't get this reference, you're not Gen X.
Oh, so sad, so sad. Actually, that's technically boomer because it happened when we were little.
It is, but I mean, it became a thing for us.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say right now, I could declare that we would invite you to join us next year because we do it every year for you to come and do a dramatic performance of Rocket Man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all I need is a stool
we would love
and
it.
2 video screens and 2 versions of myself, one all disheveled and the other one like in a tuxedo with the tie undone, drunk.
And then at the end, for like no reason, with no explanation, you would need to scream, Mr. Tambourine Man!
Yeah.
You did that too, remember that?
That's right.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man. How much
like
acid did he do before he did that special? Because that's insanity. That whole thing. Nuts. I love it. It's so fabulous.
Yeah.
But insane.
None. No, like insofar as I know,
no drugs, right?
The Shat has been largely drug-free of any sort, including weed, his entire life. That whole thing was a part of like the beatnik, like poet movement and this freedom to go, hey, let's just try shit out. And obviously, a lesson that was not learned from that time is that some of that shit's gonna suck and don't do it anymore. and
it does not age well, but it's so funny.
Right.
It's so funny for everything that it is. And again, those are the things that you're like, glad the internet exists because you can watch that whenever you want. And that's why you're like, that's a positive on the seesaw that is the internet. It's like, all right, well, we're totally out of balance, but today you can be like, yeah, that's all right.
I was invited to, I got to go to Elton John's Oscar party back when I did Queer as Folk.
Wow.
Because Queer as Folk. And I got
makes sense.
I got to wave at him across the room. That was the extent of it. I was like, hey. And I'm like, I have no idea if he can even see past here, you know, because maybe the glasses are a prop. Maybe he's blind as a bat. And so there was an element of like, I don't know if he saw me, but I had a great time.
Yeah.
Anyways, but it was because, you know, I was on the, you know, I was what we used to call back in the day, gay adjacent. You know, I was close enough to live in the, you know, in the realm of the good zip code, but not, you know, technically qualifying. And I like, you know, there are a bunch of musicians that I was pleasantly shocked because I've been an Elton John fan my whole life as far as his like songwriting, the shape of these songs, and like Crocodile Rock and that kind of stuff. I can make a pass on because I feel like there was this like this effort to be retro for a period of time that I didn't understand, right, as music moved forward. But his own songwriting, like you'd be amazed how many like really heavy metal dudes, like Zakk Wylde, Ozzy's guitar player, huge Elton John fan, and can play almost everything on piano. Started out as a piano player because he loved Elton John. One of the reasons why he's got the skill he does as a musician is because he played with both hands learning Elton John songs when he was young, for all the ending up being Ozzy's guitar player. So
which I encourage everybody to do that. I mean, it's the best thing you could do is educate yourself musically, because music is the thing that connects all. And by the way, please watch the video, because when we get to the Hold Me Closer Tiny Dancer line, up on the screen along with the lyrics are pictures of Tony Danza.
Sure. Yeah, that's a tough one. Excuse me. Hold me closer, Tony Danza, and excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Joy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last photo is Elton John with Tony Danza. It's beautiful. It's
That's
beautiful. Great. Plus, you get to just hear us sing together, and a lot of people really commit on the Elton John night, and they wear the big fun sunglasses, or they wear costumes, and you know, it's just a joy. It's a joy, and it feels physically good. And if people are like, I can't sing, I don't sing, I'm like, yeah, you do. You sing when you go to a rock concert, you sing the lyrics out loud along with everybody in the crowd, or you go to the sports ball and they're playing a song and you sing along, or you chant, or you're in the car, you go to karaoke and you've had a couple and you're singing along with the karaoke person. Just go. If you're in Portland, please come. Please come. We don't care how well you sing. You get taught your harmony parts. And there's a live band, and there's beer and a full bar, and it's so fun. And I've been doing this for 9 years, and I don't want to think about what my life would be like if I didn't have this community. And I wrote on my Substack yesterday, because I try to take the weekends off from writing about politics if I can.
Sure.
Because I'm writing about politics 3 days a week for Political Voices Network Substack, which you all should sign up for, because Tara Devlin and I are starting a show there soon, and Hal has a Substack there. You know, everybody should be on the Substack, because I really feel like Substack and Blue Sky are the ones that are emerging as the places for us to congregate. But anyway, as I wrote on my Substack yesterday, community really matters now more than ever, both online and off. So as we are building a stronger community online, I'm encouraging everybody to take time away from this and seek your offline community, and don't isolate, and don't let everything become because we cannot. That's not a sustainable lifestyle if you don't take breaks.
Well, exactly. I mean, you have to. I think you have to have again, what I call stoic optimism. You have to, everything that's outside of your control. Not only should you not let it seize your emotional state and take control of it, you have a moral responsibility not to. You have a responsibility to yourself and to those you can help, to not be overwhelmed by it's like worrying about shark attacks when you're in the middle of the country, right? And you're on dry land. Like I get in the abstract, maybe we should do something about shark attacks. Like, you can think about that all day long. You go, like, maybe I could give money to an organization.
Like, what are you going to do?
But
nothing.
Exactly.
There's certain things you can't control.
And then
the things that are keeping you up at 2:30 in the morning, you're not going to fix them at 2:30 in the morning.
Exactly.
And it's just, if you can just sort of reframe it, like, people are doing stuff. Follow the people who are doing stuff. Follow Melanie Stansberry. Do you know Melanie from New Mexico? She's fucking incredible. And she's leading that DOJ investigative, the oversight committee for DOJ, which is not a real department. So follow Melanie Stansberry. Melanie should be on every single Sunday show, every single Sunday. Because when people say, what are Democrats doing? Well, Melanie Stansberry and Jasmine Crockett and Robert Garcia, those should be that should be the rapid response team, by the way. And I would never lean ageist, but when have you seen Jerry Connolly acting rapidly? So I'm just saying, young and spry and loud and clear is what we need. Well,
that's the argument for the Doge crowd. So I don't necessarily think youth is not always the answer. There are times when youth. There are times when youth
officials though are not unelected bureaucratic Nazis putting their mitts on your stuff.
Sure, but even still, like what I would say is there are times when youth and wisdom collide, and we should appreciate that as much as possible because then we go, oh, this is an opportunity for that wisdom to grow and have more impact over time. And Jasmine Crockett and people like that are of that ilk, and I think that's the value from them.
I think we have a lot of amazing voices that are newer to Congress, but are really making an impact and are saying the things that we are saying. And Melanie Stansberry stood on the House floor the day before the Oversight Committee met for the first time for Doge to basically drag every single House Republican to filth. And not a single House Republican was on the floor when she asked, why is this happening? Why are Elon Musk and Donald Trump allowed to commit crimes every single day against the United States and nobody is in check? It's because House Republicans are helping them. Where are they right now? Behind closed doors, figuring out ways to help them is what they are doing. So it's incumbent upon us to lift Melanie Stansberry's voice and Jasmine Crockett's and Robert Garcia. Robert Garcia is getting censured for telling the truth about Elon Musk, for daring to call him a dick. Okay, well, that's just a word. Marjorie Taylor Greene brought in
actually showed a picture of a penis,
actually showed Hunter Biden's dick pic on the House floor. So your hypocrisy is bullshit here. Again, and we have, so many people are lying, and that's why we need a Democratic press secretary every single day. That Caroline is lying in the press room. And especially now, Donald Trump has banned the Associated Press from Air Force One and the Oval Office. Imagine if Joe Biden tried to ban Fox News with the outcry that would have taken place if that had occurred.
Well, even still, you can't. But banning the Associated Press requires you banning basically everyone because all the different news agencies contribute to Associated Press. Hence the name that they've got their own reporters, but they also get reporting from everywhere as an aggregate. Reuters came in and basically created that business model secondary to it. And you could argue that Substack in some ways is the indie version of Reuters and AP, that everybody throws their stuff in there and you can get a mix of things and you can rematch stories together and create a newsletter out of here's the people I follow and shit like that. That's similarly the way AP works. I wanted to put this up because there's a lot more good news than I think people are
that's
aware
happening.
Of.
That's over this. I know over the weekend in Portland there was a protest at the local Tesla, and there's another one this week. Today there are protests in all 50 state capitals, and there are also protests at your city hall. Like Portland City Hall is having a peaceful protest today from noon to 4. Portland protests are a unique animal on their own, and I'm not entirely sure I'm going to physically put myself there, only because I know who shows up. They can call it a peaceful protest within the confines of who's hosting it, who's speaking
but
at
the
them.
Spoilers will take advantage of it.
We get fucking everybody. We get those black box. What are they called? The black box, not black box, but black bloc people. We get the black bloc people. We don't really get so much Proud Boy. I mean, we might get a few of that if it's on a weekend, but not a weekday. So it's also a holiday. So I just know that it tends to not stay peaceful in the surrounding areas. So in my way of protesting, I can digitally, reach more people than if I go stand in a crowd.
I think that's wise, and I agree in Portland. And here's what I would say is that we have had an issue with the illusion of fellow travelers on our side of the aisle. Trump and those guys could incorporate those people in the form of like even the most MAGA extremists, including the Proud Boys and groups like that, because they quietly don't give a fuck about the poor in their own states. They don't care about the implications of their policies on anybody who isn't of their wealth stock, their caste in this idea. And so they don't care, because ultimately these people are going to get screwed anyways. Democrats are more inclusive about this. And in our inclusivity, other people take advantage of that. And a lot of these black bloc folks who pose as Antifa and take the idea that they are anti-fascist, look, dressing up in all black and not showing your face, even though protesting for Black Lives Matter or women's rights or any of those things would never get you fired from a job in fucking Oregon. So the idea that you have to cover your face is an absurdity, says to me that you're not actually there for that. You're there to burn the whole thing down, and you don't give a fuck.
That's exactly it.
Right. You don't give a fuck about what the people who are protesting are for. You're there to undercut all of it. That's where the soup from my family assholes come from. That whole
Soup from my family.
Right.
That exact thing happened the day that Roe was overturned and people took to the streets. That is the last time I participated in a protest in Portland. And there were the black bloc people there. And they had those batons and they were trying to smash windows. Yeah. And I could tell that some of them, because of body type and the way their black bloc clothing fit them, were women. Yeah. And so, I was literally wearing this shirt. So they knew that we were on the same side, and there was 3 of them were standing on a corner together or whatever. Right. And I was like, hey, can I approach you as someone who writes about politics for a living? Because I have questions. And they were like, absolutely. And I was like, I am not somebody who tells somebody how to do their activism. Their activism belongs to them. But why are you trying to hurt your own community when what we're doing is protesting against the government at large, the Supreme Court, this, that, and the other thing? And they were like, well, this and corporate. I'm like, no. What you're doing is you are hurting someone here who owns a small business, and they're going to have to pay to have that glass replaced that you're trying to shatter. And they're going to have to pay for every bit of damage you're doing. And what people are going to remember is that you were smashing windows, but they will never remember why.
And there's a direct through line.
You're taking away from the message here, which is women should have bodily autonomy, end of discussion. That's not what you're advocating for. That's not what you're doing.
And it never was. It was again. It was primarily a lie. I don't buy that they were actually on the side of the actual issue. They're trying to take over. And here's the direct line you can actually see.
Burn shit down.
Right. But what happened in a lot of these cases, if you look at what they go after, a lot of times they go after franchise places. A lot of times everybody talks about the Starbucks, but they'll also hit 7-Elevens and they'll hit, McDonald's or any of those other things. They'll hit the big, what they view as the corporate.
They like to hit the banks.
Yeah. Well, but the stores themselves, immigrants to this country, one of the ways that they set their family up is they take their entire nest egg from their country that they all scrape together, and they come to the United States and they get a franchise because it's a business that is accepted by the greater populace. It's not, they're not starting a hookah bar and it might fit into the community. It might not. They're like, this works and it's a good investment and I will do this thing. And so many of the ones that were destroyed during this process, and you can kind of look. There was a similar thing with the LA riots, but in Oregon and in Seattle, tons of places that were owned by immigrants, first generation immigrant families, their entire investment in it was destroyed because they attacked what they viewed as the big corporate entities. And then those people. And by the way, a ton of black businesses as well that got wiped out because that was their toehold, and they got their business wiped out. And these sons of bitches come in and destroy those places, and then you can tie a direct line to my store was wrecked during the 2020 riots, let's say, and into 2021. And right as I'm about to get help from the government or some funds or whatever, at the same time, while I'm struggling to make the case that my place, I have insurance and they're not paying out and the government should help me because this was a big political protest and the police didn't do their thing, and this is happening all over Portland and all over Seattle and all over San Francisco and LA. While they're doing that, they're seeing large groups of immigrants getting moved around the country because we don't have enough people to process them at the border. So they're being moved to New York or Chicago or something like that while they're processed, getting work permits, some of them getting their rent paid during that time or being put up for a little while. And that's where that schism starts. That's where the black community in Chicago, you want to see a version of reality that I would argue most people on our side of the aisle have not seen. Go watch the Chicago City Council meetings that have happened over the last 2 years, where black people are enraged about the funding that's going to migrants, but not to the community. And again, you could say it's imbalanced. You can say that they're, statistically, whatever. This is their emotional response to it, and their financial response to it. And it is a huge thing. Now, did it need to be those things? Are those parallel at all? Are they being led to believe that it's a zero-sum game, and if you get this, they don't get this, or if they get this, you don't get this? No, that's not how it works. But they were led to believe that. Limited resources, all the talk about America's debt at the same time, which happens in every cycle we go through, made these two communities go against each other. And then you have the ladder pulling, upper class Latinos that view themselves as white, who bought their way into the country during that window and don't want anybody else to come in after them because they do believe there's a limited resource, or they don't want the people to follow them, the people they've left their country to get away from. They're the ones who are literally saying, I'm voting against it. We need to close the border. Now that I'm in, shut the door. It's the storm cellar or the bomb shelters or the zombie apocalypse. Let's all go down in the basement and lock the door. And then the one person who goes, I'm going down here and fuck you guys in Dawn of the Dead, right? That guy who goes down into the basement to hide. That's what that is. That's that impulse. And it's not specific to a race. But in Oregon and all these other places, you had a lot of immigrants and a lot of people who went, this is a very open community. Oregon is one of these racially diverse and very progressive areas. So an immigrant could come there and they're not going to face a lot of shit like opening the same store in Louisiana. That's their worry. And then they come up there and these fucking white middle class black bloc fucking suburban kids with a lot of fucking free time burn their shop down and then go back to their parents' house in mass. There's, dozens and dozens and dozens of these kids getting, arrested over this stuff, and they're all cut from the same cloth. Did you see, I don't know if you've seen this, the Zizians storyline? Have you heard about the Zizians? Okay.
No, but what I do know is that Oregon was originally founded as a whites-only colony. I don't know if people know that.
Well, Idaho has been trying.
State was founded as a whites-only colony, and Idaho would like to take some of Oregon and bring that back.
Yeah,
so
that's what they're focused on.
That is a thing that is happening right now. Is that there's a section of Eastern Oregon that Idaho wants to annex and become more white and less Jewy, no Jews and no melanated people whatsoever.
Right.
And that's fun. That's fine.
So,
for those of us here who everyone thinks that this is such a liberal enclave, but, and as we have talked about on your show before, you get outside any city really now at this point, and it starts getting really red really fast.
Well, that's the joke I had when I was in, I had a stand-up bit for a long time, 17 miles outside any major city, as soon as the lights dim in your rearview mirror, it's about ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Everybody thinks they live in the South.
No fucking shit. Seriously,
and you could be
your immediate
in Wisconsin.
suburb might be blue, but
Yeah, and in Wisconsin, you're seeing these the South will rise again. You're like, what? Southern Ontario? You're practically Canada, asshole.
Yeah,
really?
no, it's nuts, and it's
So the Zizians, for those of you that don't know, and this is kind of in line with, I would argue, and you can relate this to however you want, but this is a real thing. They're a group. They don't call themselves the Zizians. That was attributed to the leader Ziz, who's their their cult leader. So kind of Manson family kind of esque.
Cults.
They've been responsible right now for 6 deaths so far, including a border agent, the parents of one of the members, and they all are vegan activist trans people, or they identify as such. Now, yeah.
Okay.
So
I don't want to claim any of that though, because they're doing bad shit.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
You know,
So,
well, there's bad apples in every bunch. What are you going to say?
well, this group specifically, like the leader Ziz, Jack Lasota, and again, part of it is hard to parse out what they really believe. And this is the unfortunate aspect. This is kind of what caused my rant the other day about how like trans people are being saddled with everybody who has this kind of like cartoonish Dungeons and Dragons idea of gender, and they're just playing around with it like it's a game or an outfit, and genuine trans people have to bear the weight of these assholes who are just like, you know, like it's like the people on college campuses in tents actually thinking they're camping. You're like, dude, there's a fucking Starbucks across the road. Shut the fuck up. You're not really camping. It's not,
you're not occupying anything.
Yeah, simmer the fuck down. You're literally, you're at the meeting and everybody's tapping their Starbucks cup. Like, get the fuck out of here. So, but
yeah, no,
these guys,
I also think that there's a segment of this population that confuses furries and trans people.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right? That they think that there's like this crazy, extravagant costume cosplay aspect of being a trans person, and that's not it at all.
Which I would argue dismisses the reality of trans people every much as right-wingers do, because they view it as fashion, basically, as opposed to, you know, a reality they have to deal with. So it's gross. So anyways, these guys, 6 dead so far, including this one right here. She, trans woman, was shot to death in a shootout with a Border Patrol agent. That Border Patrol agent pulled them over for a car with no license plates on it, and knocked on the window, and they just came out guns a-blazing, just started shooting.
Damn.
And the cop just managed to pull and take down one of them before succumbing to their injuries. And died. And then one of the other ones couldn't buy a gun in Vermont because they had a California driver's license. So they got a Vermont driver's license, waited a week, bought a gun, and a week later their parents were dead.
Yay, America!
Yeah. And then and again, this is Bernie Sanders' state where the gun laws are more open than anywhere else in the Northeast, and that's because Bernie Sanders was to the right of Hillary Clinton on gun rights because of Vermont. So let's just put that there. But in this particular group, the leader of the pack, this one right here, by the way, because it's a lot to read, I put this in Notebook LM, which makes podcasts that sound like real humans, and it's not. It's the weirdest fucking thing.
I don't like AI. I don't want
silly,
anything replacing me.
You ever have that thing where it says, like, read the article to me on something, and it uses a computer voice because you're driving and you can't read an article, and you read that article to me? It's like that. It just does it in conversational form. Anyways, this one, Jack Lasota, goes by Ziz and is trans, and
how is
maybe
that spelled,
uses
by the way?
Z-I-Z.
Is it Z-I-Z? Okay.
Yeah, the Zizians. So apparently died in San Francisco Bay, fell overboard in a scuffle on a tugboat that they had bought in Alaska, and a bunch of them sailed it back because they were going to start this resistance fleet, this rationalist fleet of where they were all going to live rent free in San Francisco Bay with a bunch of ships. It's still there, by the way. The boat is still there, half sunk in the bay. They abandoned it after a while because they didn't know how to do it. Yeah, it's terrific. Anyways, Lasota apparently died. And was declared dead. There was an obituary. They were declared dead and all that kind of stuff. And then they showed up in a hotel room after the shooting of this other one's parents, and in Pennsylvania. And then they were released on bond, and poof. So they're in the wind. Okay. And this is ongoing. This is an ongoing thing. I would argue, in looking at I started reading the writings of these folks, and there is a lesson in this whole thing for people on our side of the aisle in the honestly deluded, the absolute confused, or softly confused, meaning well in the center sort of it, and then the absolute flim-flam con artist bullshitter crowd on the other side. And they're like every other group of human beings, ladies and gentlemen, there is a spectrum in this particular case. And this group is a great example of that spectrum where you have somebody who is completely manipulative, taking advantage of people who are on the fence. Lesotho talked one of the people, lived on a sailboat for a while, which is why they got this idea to go get this tugboat in Alaska, with a person who was autistic and gay who lived on a sailboat, and Lesotho talked them into believing they were trans, basically they did this sleep deprivation experiment. Yeah, it just talked them into it. Said, you have to be. This is the only thing that explains who you are. And it made them break up with their boyfriend, and it was just really ugly. And then they got kicked off the boat. Ziz got kicked off the boat because they were like, wait a minute, I'm not trans, I'm gay. This is my boyfriend, and I'm feminine in my approach. I'm not, whatever. So they, and again, just playing on their autism, playing on their social anxiety and stuff, and manipulating them into this situation. There's a spectrum of this group that not only does this to other people, but also poses as trans women so that they can legally change their name and get away with it, even though they aren't really trans. Okay. And hide who they are and what they're doing. And then if anybody approaches them and says, are you their female name, they can say their male name because it's nobody's fucking business. And they can just be rude, and people usually just in the social embarrassment of it walk away, right? Right. And they've been able to slink around the country manipulating their identity and killing people because of, I would argue, the gaping hole in the conversation that we need to have to honor trans people's experience without letting predators and other people take advantage of society's open doors and manipulate that system.
Are they specifically targeting certain people, or are they just randomly killing people who get in their way?
Well,
what's happening? Is there
a
pathology to is there a method to their madness? We don't like this person because they're really anti-trans. Are they targeting J.K. Rowling?
No. They are one of them killed. They killed one of them's parents
the
for the money.
Border agent, right?
And the border agent they shot because they were getting away. And then there was a guy who was letting them rent They created all these box trucks that they filled with computers. They're all brilliant, by the way. They all went to Ivy League schools. They all worked as computer programmers at some point. They were all they've got, they're making crypto and all kinds of stuff. They're manipulating, money transfers and all kinds of, they're very bright people specifically because that's how they came up with this scheme to manipulate everything. But they basically bought these box trucks, these fucking U-Haul trucks, white U-Haul trucks, and then outfitted them on the inside like tiny houses for their computer setups. And then they plug in to the electricity someplace and steal the Wi-Fi from that place and then do all this wacky, hacker shit on top of it. Yeah. The guy who was letting them rent parking space on his property, basically during the COVID eviction, moratorium, they stopped paying him. And he's like, yeah, it's not a building. You can park anywhere. I'm not running you out of a house. That shouldn't apply. So move on or stop using my electricity, I guess. And they invited him down because they said there was a water leak. And when he bent over to look at the water leak, they stabbed him through the chest with a samurai sword and cut his face with another knife. And he survived. Oh, my God.
How are they getting away with doing that? They're just one step ahead of the law?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that they're just off-gridding it and running all over the place, right?
But wow, this is insanity.
It's crazy. Right. That's why I had to make this primer on it because holy shit, right? But that guy survived. He shot one of them in that process.
Wait a minute, the guy with the samurai sword in the face.
Yeah,
and what they do
slashed
to his face?
He lost an eye. They slashed his eye.
Jesus Christ.
Wait, it gets worse. So he had a gun on him because he lives up in the sticks. They stabbed him. He shot one of them. They all ran away, took that one away and split. He survived. And then before he could go to, two of them are being held in San Francisco jail. Before they could go to trial, he's obviously the witness and the one it happened to. I think it was this one. Stabbed him to death, snuck up on him.
Oh my God!
Wait, No, I don't think. Yeah, it's this one, the one with the mask.
Soon to be a
this one right here.
miniseries on Netflix.
Yeah.
What
Oh my God.
wow.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying to Summer. Like, this is our new true crime thing when it finally shakes out. This one's on.
I mean,
on,
you should just buy the
trial.
rights immediately.
Right.
Somehow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So this one right here, stabbed this guy and like snuck up behind him and just.
So it's like a trans Manson family.
Yes, the trans Manson. That's funny, man. Yeah, the trans Manson family. That's exactly what it is.
I am an untapped writing gold mine. Jesus fucking Christ. Let's go with the book deal. Anyway,
right.
trans Manson family. Just call them that.
Yeah. So that's this. I went through and made a big breakdown of what it was, because it keeps showing up, and on the right they're using this as sort of a weapon against trans people and the like, and saying again, the Manson family apparently is a big heterosex cult, but that doesn't reflect on the greater hetero community at all. Jeffrey Epstein was a heterosexual. That doesn't reflect on the greater heterosexual community, but somehow these assholes
it just reflects on the
pedophile
community. I mean, what the fuck?
Right.
Yeah.
But that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and if you look at the percentages of how the transgender community doesn't even make up 1% of the population. So this isn't even 1% of the trans population. So
exactly,
it's such a small niche group of crazy people.
I would argue they're not even real. I would argue that this is they're using what were at that time.
It's a cover.
Yes, it's a cover. They're using that as cover because they can get. One of them lived at a trans inclusive art commune in San Francisco rent free without transitioning, just by changing their pronouns. They just sat there, right? Yeah,
that's that's pathological.
Right.
That's a lot of sociopaths figuring out how to manipulate people who are not as mentally strong and being able to. That's a perfect cult example. It's a small one, but it's a perfect example of how a cult can begin and then fuck with other people's shit.
Right.
So that's bad.
All
cults are bad. All cults are bad.
Not healthy. But the point I would make is that as far as us in society, we have to start being comfortable with broader conversations and being part of those broader conversations, instead of going, I can't discuss that because that's specific to this group. I can't discuss that because that's their business. Because if you do that, then anybody who pretends to be part of that group automatically says anything that people in the group have, because quite frankly, they can move between worlds. They don't have to portray themselves as that. They can get all the benefits of greater societal acceptance and still manipulate and stay at a woman's shelter, pretending to be a trans woman because the rules about that are such that. And then you start to understand where the J.K. Rowlings and even, like I said, the Nancy Maces of the world have, whether you believe that they are, they believe what they're saying and they're just deluded, or they're bigoted, or whatever your belief system is, you can see where the seeds of the greater society going, she's got a point, come from. Right. Because we are allowing people who are not trans in that circumstance to take advantage of our inability to speak frankly about the circumstance and in ways that are protective of the trans community as the greater society, because we're so much bigger.
Right, and they just passed a law that is going to keep transgender women from participating in women's sports. And when people are out there, people who have visibility are out there saying, we just got rid of men in women's sports. That's not what happened. That's not what you did. You didn't remove men from women's sports. You removed women from women's sports. And the percentage of transgender women in women's sports is so minute that it should never have become an issue. None of this should be an issue. We should not even be talking about people's bodies in relation to the government. I mean, all of it is skewed, and a lot of it is a distraction.
But hold on.
This is a good part of the point.
Yeah,
I understand your bigger point, but it's these people who get.
If that exists, then there's no Title IX. Right, but again, if you want to get rid of Title IX, which created the idea of women's sports in the first place, then you have to say so. But saying that that the government has no business saying what people's bodies legally can and can't do. We do that with age. We do that. You can be president only after you're 35 and a you know what I mean? We don't let adults go to elementary school and say, I didn't really learn the first
No,
time,
but
so
we
I
also
want to sit
shouldn't
here.
let the government define who a person is or how they decide to present themselves to society. It has nothing to do with the government.
I agree.
Nothing
I agree.
whatsoever.
Well,
And
again, but
the fact that we get mired in these conversations, we as allies have a lot of responsibility to just elevate the communities we were not born into without appropriating their culture.
yeah,
And
I
that's
get
a
that. No,
hard
wait,
lesson for
hold.
us to
I get
learn,
it.
and
I
that
feel
they
like
don't
that's
need
what
us
got
to
us
speak
into
for
this.
them.
No, I think that's what got us into this in the first place was the
Right.
fear of overlapping somebody else and talking for a minority, and this idea that there was an instant offense to that instead of, because you couldn't even be an ally at some point, because how dare you even bring it up in the conversation. And again, what I would argue is that the government does have a place in defining who is trans and who is not, so that people who can just fuck around with the label all they want, don't take advantage of trans people's spaces or their image in the country or any of those other things, because they end up being shouldered with that burden. Straight community and the gay community does not necessarily have to worry about that, because no, that doesn't overlay onto them, right? It doesn't overlap.
Yeah.
If somebody's, nobody can say you don't get access to a space by saying you're straight or gay anymore. I mean, you could argue that, like, if you wanted to be a right winger, if you want to be Lindsey Graham, like saying you're straight is how you get access or something like that. But that's on an interpersonal level. On a legal level, it doesn't matter countrywide. But that you can't get a job because you say you're gay any more than you can get a job for saying you're straight. Both can be true, and you can have the same job. The interesting thing about trans is that there's a specific need associated with that, especially when it comes to bathrooms, that is different than gay or straight people. And if anybody can assert trans identity, that puts an undue burden on actual trans people, because people who, like the black bloc kids who don't actually give a fuck about the issue, they can pretend. And in that pretense, they can be spoilers. They can troll their way into a situation and it doesn't reflect badly on the greater society. It ends up reflecting badly on trans people. And that's where there is a rule level. There is a standardized view of what that is, right? And so this conversation has to be had to protect trans people. And we weren't willing to have it because of this idea that you don't dare step into that fray if you're not that thing, that you can't speak for
Right.
or around. But I would never presume in my life to speak for trans people. But I absolutely can speak as an advocate for trans people in the greater community, right? And that's what. And the problem is there was a lot of but not of course, because a lot of people were afraid to do it, or they'd offload it because it's a difficult conversation to have.
Oh, no. I mean, it's the same thing where white women are afraid to be public advocates for black women because they don't know how to speak to black women for some reason, which is ridiculous. Speaking to black women is the same thing as speaking to anybody else. Like, just speak to a human being as a fellow human being. Relate to them on a human level. It actually isn't that difficult when someone says, hi, how are you? Well, how are you? Like, just talk to each other and have conversations. I wrote a whole Substack about this because there were white women who were very self-congratulatory when we had our white women call for Kamala Harris, and then they fucking disappeared. Where'd they go? I don't know. But what I do know is that when we
I would argue that everybody who was on any of those calls voted for Harris. Any of them.
Well, it's not that they didn't vote. It's that they didn't continue to advocate publicly like they promised. That call was a direct response to the black women who held the call on the day Joe announced he was stepping aside, because they already had a weekly call scheduled. White women didn't have a weekly call scheduled to support Joe Biden, but black women did. And so as soon as white women saw black women rising up and having a record Zoom call, they were like, we need a Zoom of our own. And I was on that call. I wasn't asked to speak on that call, although I contacted the organizers. There were a lot of famous white women who were like, look at us doing good by our black sisters. We have to keep doing this. But then they didn't. They were not visible. They were not vocal. I will tell you, when I was at the DNC, white women were the absolute minority. And so when you're saying you're an advocate for a group, that you need to show up. You need to show up as much as possible. And your role as an advocate and as an ally is not to appropriate, but elevate and say,
I agree,
here's a tweet to share from this person. Here is a tweet to share from that person. It is not difficult to be an ally. And the best thing that you can do is ask questions. What do you need from me? How can I best help you? That's all you have to do, because if you presume to speak for a community, they don't want you to. But you can speak on behalf of being an ally for them, which is the whole point of us talking about this for the last half hour.
Sure. But and again, I've
but
obviously
not to the
never
detriment of the other conversations, because when you get too narrowly focused, you lose sight of the bigger picture, which is the other thing that we have to make sure we don't do.
Well, the issue is that you have literally again set a snare in that conversation. One is ask the person, advocate on their behalf, which if you ask like Robin, what's her name, who wrote the White Fragility book, is infantilizing and condescending to black people to ask them what you need to do for them. Like, you should just figure it out on your own. And socially, there is a lot of awkwardness, not on the right, on the left, about how to discuss these topics in a way where you have agency, not you're acting as an agent on somebody else based on what they would do.
It's a balance that's difficult. And I will tell you that during the 107 days of Kamala's campaign, I was in DM rooms with black women, and what it was, a lot of white women stumble in their attempts to be like, hey, I'm one of the good ones. And it gets cringy. And I think white women are afraid of doing that too. It's about overstepping and not knowing where the line is.
What is the response when people do that? What is the response when people do that? They freeze. They're not sure what to do.
And then they
can't
stop
advocate
because they think they're doing it wrong.
Right.
And
rather than do something wrong,
better. That's all. Just learn better.
Yeah, but again, I there's a lot of should in that, and I wish they could. But I don't necessarily know that there's a path for them to learn better, because it's just a minefield.
They have to want to learn better, right?
I think they do. I think they do. I don't think. Yeah, but again, I think most Democratic
for them in that situation, it's about personal comfort.
No, I also think they don't want to make black women uncomfortable. They don't want to seize the microphone or do these things or speak out. They already have women in general in society are already ice skating uphill about asserting themselves in greater society. Anyways, there's already that push down, especially with this like MAGA on the rise attitude of like trad life bullshit. They've got that
a whole other thing.
I think in this particular circumstance, we are repeatedly asking too much of women too quickly with not enough tools, and assuming that they should be able to just figure it out for themselves. And I feel like that's everybody has to participate in that. It can't just be the acquisition of the floor like a talking feather circle, which again turns into a bunch of hippy dippy baloney and doesn't actually. And
it's about having one-on-one conversations. It's having the conversations when you have the opportunity, rather than trying to manufacture something that isn't authentic. And if you have opportunity, you do. I don't have that much opportunity to speak to black women in person because I live in one of the whitest cities in the world. And so when I have the opportunity, I take it, and and I have the conversations online, and I try to live by example without shoving it down anybody's throat, because everybody comes to those places on their own. You and I have the privilege of sitting here like this and having these conversations so that people can think about what that means for them and how they can put that into practice in their lives. And what I would also, maybe what you and I need to start doing is using like the last few minutes of the show to just take questions from the chat, because right now, a lot of us, I think, feel one of the reasons why the right is doing what they're doing and why Trump and Musk are doing what they're doing is to continue to divide us in every way they possibly can, so that we can't unite and be a front against them. And one of the things that they did when they, I believe, fucked with the election was try to make the divide between races look even wider than it actually is, and in a way to divide us further and make sure that we never connect and never come together as community. So whether you agree about something or whether you don't, I think we need to be having the difficult conversations means actually having them. So let's have it.
Well,
and
I
let's
think
do
we
it.
are, 'cause
And like,
I
I know
will,
that.
like,
Well, you and
if
I
I
are,
may.
but like, when I
Well,
try to have a difficult conversation with a MAGA person, I just get trolled. I just get memes. I get,
yeah, I'm not
you know,
having the
bullshit.
difficult.
So
No.
right
I'm not
now,
interested in
but
having a
right now we
difficult
have MAGA
conversation with.
kids in the chat, right?
Right.
Ask me a
Yeah, but that's
question.
no, no,
Ask me
no,
a
no, no,
question
no.
right now, and
What
I
I'm
will
saying,
answer because it's
I
about
know you
having
will.
dialogue, right?
Right.
You
No,
can't grow community
I'm.
without having a conversation.
Hold on. And
So
I'm not arguing that we need to have a more open conversation with MAGA to get this. I'm arguing that on our side of the aisle, we need to have a more frank and supportive conversation in general, where the sort of laws of racial and religious suspicion are suspended in the space where people, at least on by their showing up, are there to help. And what happened with the women you're talking about, statistically speaking, if you're looking at the polling or whatever, if they didn't do more in the thing, it's because they were afraid of offending someone, not because they didn't care about the issue. It wasn't because they ignored the needs of black women or they ignored these ideas. It's that they felt frozen in place because how dare they speak and take a microphone away from somebody. And the slacktivists who came up on stage and took the mic and all those kind of things were creating that illusion. And when you talk about, like, you don't get, because you're in Portland, you talk to certain people and you have that conversation. I always go back to that recurring phrase from Ed Kemper in Mindhunter, where he's like, that it seems to me that all your insights about serial killers have been gleaned from the ones you have been able to catch. And in the reality is that, yeah, so when you're in a talking circle with the online class or the activist class, you are going to get only the version of acceptable conversation that occurs in that space. And so even the black women you're talking to, you are only talking to the ones that have this set of rules and this set of guidelines and these sets of priorities. The same thing will be true of those white women that showed up or didn't show up at the DNC, have a myriad of reasons why they didn't show up or why they would show up. Specifically, where they would, the ones that showed up were there to acquiesce and perhaps virtue signal that that's what they were doing. Whereas the ones who stayed home arguably were like, I'm just getting out of the way and letting them speak, which may have been more honest than the ones who showed up to, point and go, hey, I'm here letting them talk, right? So that's the issue. It's not that we're not having a conversation with MAGA across the aisle about these things. It's that we have, I think, acquiesced the space, the ground of this conversation to the worst of society because we're unwilling to have a complete conversation about it because of fear of offense or a misguided belief that skin color trumps everything else, or that or life experience can be drafted and subdivided into categorization to the point where it dehumanizes people. So over the last little bit, I've been doing the Friday Eye thing, and I always keep up on what the nearest AI news is and the like. And one of the things I watched, J.D. Vance spoke at this AI get-together, whatever, and it was bullshit, but whatever. He read a speech that was written by Peter Thiel, basically. But
oh my god, this timeline so much.
But at this thing, there was this guy from, I believe he was from Turkey, who was, an AI scientist and a specialist, who was talking about how life and jobs and our place in society is going to be shaped by AI over the next coming little bit, and how the characteristics of being a human are going to be the commodity of the future: empathy, intellect, creativity, charm, all those kind of things, because you can't mechanize those things. And he's like, in the future, the things that you can commodify in human behavior are going to be, zero cost labor, whether it's an accountant or a legal secretary or an assistant doing stuff for you digitally. All that's going to be, all those traits of a human that they commodify to make a living are going to be taken away. But creativity and all these things that make us ourselves is going to be the only thing that really anybody can parlay into any worth. And I would argue that that's already happened. if you look at just like software that helps you do things, you used to have to hire a guy to actually cut a picture out of physical photograph to put it on another background, or you'd have to have background painters that worked dozens of them on a set for, to create the back of what would be a sailboat's, skyline in a giant pool at Paramount Studios and stuff. And now it's not only one guy or one woman, it's one click. It's a fucking, it's a filter, right? And that has always been happening. And as this has happened, those traits of charm and identity and empathy and personality, those have already become the social currency. They're not going to, like this guy says they are. They have been. And I would argue that racial branding, religious branding, and even the rise of MAGA and Black Bloc and all these things can be seen as the commoditization, the new commoditization of social structures, that you sell and create your worth based on your intrinsic identities or those you can take, instead of what you give to society or who you are or what your talents are, what you want to do, which is what he's talking about. We've already gotten to a place where DEI and affirmative action were seen as commodifying your race, religion, country of origin. Specifically, this got you a monetary thing. It got you into a college. It got you into a job. That's already happened. And therefore, other people are like, that means that my race, my religion meant I didn't get that thing. That you get to go, a woman who's been sexually assaulted, who wants to go to a woman's shelter, and there's a trans woman there who barely identifies as trans, is obviously not presenting, but simply by name can declare themselves as such, sitting in a circle with 8 women who have been sexually assaulted, declaring they're trans. It is part of that problem. And it has nothing, that's not the burden of trans people. It's been made to be a burden of trans people. That person, whatever the fuck their plan is, whatever they're doing, has been put on the backs of trans people who already have enough on their backs. And so I think our fear of discussing these things or acquiescing spaces or not speaking fervently and with as much passion as we believe about the equality of our fellow human beings and their inherent worth on this fucking planet, and going, okay, you can say that, but step aside so somebody else can say it, is a waste of fucking time and created a ton of backbiting that the right wing played on and used. That's my argument. That our empathy was weaponized against us. And it quieted those women you're talking about. Those women who felt like, if I say anything, if I say it wrong, or if I don't say it right, or if I get the pronouns wrong, even though they changed their pronouns this morning and I didn't get the memo, I'm going to insult them. So I think I will be quiet. And we have had decades, if not hundreds of years, of women being forced to be quiet by society at large.
Oh yeah,
and now
that's a whole other show. We could do an hour.
Well, it isn't though, because there's
alone.
What I'm saying is now this is just another version of that social pressure. This is the same fucking thing as getting the barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, just done on a socially orchestrated manner. And I would say it is the value of every ally to misspeak and be stupid and try everything to convey the message, because like there are dozens of self-help group books, but they all say the same thing, but they say it in a different voice, so it might hit you and go, oh, that's how I can get my shit together. That's why there need to be so many of them. The same thing is true of if some woman, a white woman, middle class, or a poor white trash lady who's come around after being MAGA for a while and wakes up to it, and she talks poorly and she phrases things wrong and she screws up pronouns, but she says it in a way that the people that we're trying to make understand the value of trans people or the value of black women, she might hit that chord. But in our current structure over the last couple of years, because of this acquiescent space idea, and that you have to make space for those folks, what you have is people preaching to a choir that's not even there. And the people that could actually speak to the crowd that you're trying to convince aren't speaking because they're afraid to fuck up. They're new allies. They're new. And they don't understand it any more than, in some cases, the greater society doesn't understand it. And that room to fuck up has to be part of our conversation. And it hasn't been. And I find it cruel and dismissive. And I also think that it takes a huge tool out of our toolbox. And I, like, as a straight white dude who was in Queer as Folk, I am offended by what it has done to, like, white women who make up the purse strings of the country, who spend most of the money in the house. They buy the insurance. They take the kids to school en masse. They're the biggest single group of purchasers of healthcare and education in this fucking country. And there was a huge move in our party and on our side of the aisle to tell them to shut the fuck up over the last couple of years, because they couldn't quite articulate a socially slippery space. And you know who doesn't care about socially slippery spaces and who can come in and at least play on strength? Trump and MAGA. They came in and went, it's all bullshit anyways, fuck it. And it appealed to a huge chunk of people. And that's our fault. That's our weakness. That's our giving away power of somebody who deserves a voice to somebody who just will give the illusion of security to people who are panicked in an insecure world. That's my problem with it. I hope that is clear. I know it's like it's a murky conversation, but it's like it's part of the conversation. You and I talk about this a lot, and I love the fact that you're on because I know you come from an honest space, and I know I come from an honest space. And this is the part of the conversation that has to be hashed out, because it's not these fuckers like TYT blaming the trans conversation or culture war issues and we should have stayed away from that. No, some people are just too fucking dumb to talk about these things or don't actually believe in them. That's their problem. The way they deal with the issues is bad and not effective and undermines everything. But there are a lot of people who genuinely care, and everybody who cares should speak up and never be afraid to speak as loudly and as clearly as they possibly can. Because if you feel like, oh my God, if I dare say what I want to say, I'm stepping on the toes of someone on the same side as me, you're wasting both your time.
I mean, I personally don't worry about that. I think that I've developed, the skills over time by listening and learning and making mistakes and stumbling and then picking myself up and doing right afterwards. You can't expect everybody to be where you are. Right. All you can do is ask them to be open to learning and hoping they'll retain information so that they are better armed when they have conversations, because we're living at a time where not enough people care about truth and facts. And that's another part of the conversation, because if you're not informed enough, if you don't have a source that's reliable enough, then you're only getting a fraction of the information that you need. And then it's a disservice to you and the other person that you're trying to have a conversation with, or another conversation that you want more people to partake in. And we're living in a time where the right is trying to take away all factual sources. And so it's difficult to, continue to, I get what you're saying 100%, but we're living in a time where they're trying to reduce people's education. They're trying to disseminate where you get your information from. They're trying to do away with the Department of Education. They're trying to eliminate people who are telling the truth, and they're trying to end, places where the truth comes from. And so it's a question, obviously a bigger conversation that you and I have. It's making these conversations happen in larger public spaces too.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Because they accuse us of being in an echo chamber, but that's not entirely true. You particularly have a more, a wider range of an audience, and that appeals. So if you have MAGA people and people on the left in the same place, you can both carry that message of, here is a conversation that we're not having that we could be doing better at having. And thanks to Hal Sparks, I learned that I'm not doing this correctly, and I'm going to try to do this better going forward. Like, even if you're just starting from there, it means you took something away from this conversation that you didn't have in your brain when we started it an hour or so ago. So that's productive. I am
Right.
about, and I understand what you're saying. And at the core, what you're asking for is productive conversations. You're
Right.
asking for people to open up a space in their lives and in their brains and in their souls to learn new things, to be better at having conversations that are hard to have. Michelle Obama asked us to have difficult conversations all the way back in August at the DNC, and those difficult conversations were not taking place. And the
Right.
media has a responsibility here, because it's incumbent upon them to bring people on the air who are advocating the way we are advocating, not just
Right.
people who are going to get ratings because they make people mad. And so that imbalance is also created. And people are
Yeah.
so used to the rage cycle that when we're capable of having conversations in tones of voice like this, people are like, well, what are you doing if you're not yelling and screaming at each other?
Right.
You know, if
Right.
you're not on a
Yeah.
panel with Scott Jennings, are you really achieving anything?
Right.
I don't know. And so
I here.
I would say that this is a great stepping point. Like we've started here, we're stepping off at this point. We need to continue this and elevate it and continue, instead of saying we need to have these conversations. Well, next Monday we'll take this conversation to the next level and be able to talk about
Right.
this. And Tara Devlin and I are going to be co-hosting a show together on the Political Voices Network, where we're
Awesome.
going to be doing that. And we're going to be talking to people, not just each other. We'll eventually have guests. We're going to have live chat. We're going to have Q&A. We're going to have conversations rather than just spewing monologues at you saying, here's what's all fucked up and fix this and do this and do this and do that. It's more like, what's going on with you? How are you you're looking at the same thing we're looking at, but what's your takeaway? What do you want to see? What do you want to see Democrats doing? What's the conversation you're not hearing that we should be having? So it's a back and forth. It's a dialogue rather than a monologue. And
Agreed,
and
but I
I think
also-
that's
here's what I
getting
would-
lost too.
Here's what I would say. Sometimes dialogue and interaction can be a cheap substitute for introspection. Instead of asking someone else how you should converse about something, and replacing your jargon with theirs, I would argue that there needs to be a greater internal conversation amongst Democrats and people on our side of the aisle about how you would hear what you're trying to say, not just using that jargon, like a jargon-free explanation or a jargon-free conversation, right? Is crucial, and you need to decide what that means for you. Not run around sort of like, I would argue, in a messaging sense, playing "Are You My Mother?" The
Right.
value, you know what I mean? Like, because what they would say might work for them, but it might be wrong for your audience and who you end up talking to. That's why it's crucial. There's an element of navel gazing is valuable in this regard. Look, I am a guy. I have never smoked pot in my life, and I know this is going to set off a thing in the chat. It always does, and I'm never going to. I don't like it. I think it stinks. I don't like handing over my emotions or my sense of well-being to anything psychotropic, and don't go off on sugar and caffeine, because one's a stimulant and the other one's sort of a stimulant, which is different. It makes you faster, but it's not going to.
It's not
it's
for
not cocaine.
everyone.
But here's the point.
It is not for everyone.
I'm on a personal level, I'm against it. I'm not even where I'm not going to do it for myself. I don't think it's a good idea. However, if anybody wants to go back and look, with Danny Glover and Melissa Etheridge and a bunch of other people, fought for legalization in California, and I did multiple events for the legalization of pot in the state. I did that. I went and stood there and said, I believe it should be legal. You should be allowed to. I am never going to do it. I have no interest in doing it. And I would argue, my voice in that argument had extra value because I'm not a participant in it. I am
Right,
not
just
a part
like you're
of the
not
group.
going to have an abortion, but you support women's right
Exactly.
to have that
And so
choice. It's the same
I
thing.
cannot, and my advocacy cannot be written off as simply self-interest. And and that's where I felt like it was my responsibility to do it. Because and it absolutely was the truth. I in my interviews, everybody that was beginning, Miss Melissa, Danny Glover, everybody who was with me at those events, all of them obviously smoked pot. Fucking
Right.
Mar and all these, they would interview Mar and all these people about it, and they're like, "Well, you kind of just don't want to get busted. That's what you're really arguing about. That's what it sounded like. They wrote it
You
off.
still want to go to prison for a plant.
Right, but me, they couldn't use that. They couldn't do it. It stymied their primary argument.
And so when
right?
they asked you what was your take, that everyone should have the choice if they want to smoke it or not, just like a woman should have the choice to have an abortion if she needs it or not. Is it that? Is it just the choice? It's about the choice, having the choice, the freedom of the choice.
Here were my two primary arguments. One is I don't drink alcohol either, but that's legal, and people on weed don't speed and crash their car like alcoholics do. There's no version of that DUI that exists with pot where it does with alcohol. If you mix it with other stuff, PCP, that's another conversation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about weed in particular. Secondly, for every person that was in jail for weed in the California prison system, you could have 3 teachers.
That's an excellent argument also.
The cost of one person in jail for weed in California, weed alone, if you let them out, you can afford 3 more fucking teachers.
Amazing, right?
Right. That's enough. I don't need any other fucking reasons. I don't at all.
And if you wanted one, it's a boon to every local economy. It has boosted financially. Yes, it has. It's made money.
California.
There's a glut in Oregon. In some states, they're having they have too much weed.
Well, it's not even that. It's actually
originally
it actually
though,
built
the
up.
original boosts. Wow.
Well, the
good business.
What happened was it also created, because you have to pay taxes on it, and the taxes are very high. It helped the illegal weed trade grow because it was cheaper. So you could get the same shit and you sold it under the table. So it became these dual streams. That's,
I don't know. And now,
but that's not about the sale part of it.
Dispensary on every corner. So,
right.
Basically.
Right. And it's not natural anymore. It's all these modified versions. And don't get me started. But the point is,
it depends on where you go. You can get the good stuff. You can get your hydroponic. You can get whatever. You can go to Vancouver, BC, and buy crazy stuff in their dispensaries, but that's a whole other country.
And somebody else has lots of uses for hemp. That's another primary one too. Is that you legalize weed and you no longer have a problem for hemp? Right?
Yes.
Agree. Totally agree. It's one of the areas where you and I and Mitch McConnell agree. But
it's a money-making enterprise, and also medically makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It helps a lot of people with chronic pain, people who are going through chemotherapy. Medical marijuana genuinely is an alternative to opiates and other things that people get addicted to and have killed people. No one's going to OD if they take an extra toke or two. So that's the other thing. Modification matters with everything. Just moderation matters. I'm not high right now, so you can function as a human being and occasionally still lean into it.
One of the things too is that the naturally occurring weed, as it were, is different than these mega strains and the like. And there are absolutely marijuana can be toxic just like anything else. And
I still say it's a gift from the earth. Like way back, Mother Nature was like, "Fuck, now we have people. That shit's going to be hard for them. Let's give them a little something." Just to take the edge off at the end of the day. You have coffee in the morning and the weed at night. Every so often, Mother Nature had to throw us a bone. She's like, these people are not going to have it easy. Let's give them something. Anyway. Little humor. Can you have a little fucking humor in this fucking shit show we're living in?
Well, we're getting us, again, this always, like I said, this always devolves into the argument about why and what and how much and whether it's good or...
Leave Hal alone. If Hal doesn't want to get high, you didn't have to. Leave him be.
Hal is a bit misinformed, but that's okay. Alcohol is
no,
poison.
He's not.
Right, no, I'm not.
No, Hal is smarter and more informed than any of us.
I am not misinformed. This is psychology
and he's not
today.
I'm not coming.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the point. You can overdo anything.
Nope.
Simmer down. So here's what I would say. The point isn't even about the merits of it. We should be having this greater conversation. It's important. But the point I was trying to make is that I don't smoke weed. I'm never going to smoke weed. I fucking hate it. I think it stinks. I don't agree with it. However, I will fight for your right to be able to do it and not go to jail for it for a myriad of reasons, among them your own personal freedom to do such a thing. So my point goes to our greater conversation. What we were talking about before, as we've gone a little bit over today, but I appreciate Tara for sticking around in this, is that you can speak on issues that don't necessarily affect you, that you advocate for fearlessly without I was never worried that like a weed smoker was going like, you don't have the lived experience of somebody who smokes weed. Yeah, I know.
You don't need to.
But
and that's the
why
whole thing that gets lost in the arguments about advocacy or whatever else. You don't have to have the lived experience to look at another person and go, you have the right to live your experience too. You know, like it's just being a basic human being, and that's what's gotten lost in this fucked up society.
You know, it's like the joke in Sexy Liberals that I speak redneck because I grew up in Kentucky, and a lot of people, quite frankly, in the upper echelons of what we would consider the Democratic Party and the like, either because they come from cities or they went to Ivy League schools or something like that, don't speak redneck. They don't have the lived experience to speak to rednecks the way I do, for example, or whatever. And I can speak
do I,
at them
because I lived
right?
in Georgia for 8 years.
There you go. So and again, part of the reason is not because I still am one, but because I fucking left. And the value of that is like, not only do I have my lived experiences, that sucks. I'm not doing that anymore, and that counts as well. Not being a part of something that you used to.
You have the experience of something completely different. I lived like that, didn't work for me. I'm living like this is way better now. So
exactly.
Yeah,
so
that's what you're supposed to learn from.
And what I would like everyone to take away from this, from my point of view, is spend more time, pushing back against the opposition to what you believe, and zero policing anybody on your side of the aisle that may not be doing it exactly right or is awkward or not 100% on board. If they're 85% with you and you're like, you're treating them as if they are, Mitch McConnell circa, SCOTUS fight, you're in the wrong. That's wrong. You're being a bad ally to your own ideas. And other than that, I have no opinion.
Yeah, neither do I. I have no takes. It's also, and we can maybe pick this up next week, when you have somebody that you've been following for a long time that you believe has been on your side for whatever, and you have all of these ideals similarly, but there's one glaring thing that you disagree on, it kind of makes everything else, like it colors everything else, because it's like, I know you're a Democrat and I know you're an advocate and I know you're an ally, but you don't like trans people and you side with J.K. Rowling about trans people. Like, how am I supposed to deal with you now? Like, that's weird, because I don't know what to do with that.
Okay, well then partly that's because of you are taking the right who advocates for the elimination of trans people, or their total non-existence, and taking their word for what J.K. Rowling's concerns are, which are women's only spaces, sexual assault, and that kind of stuff. She's not anti-gay. She never has been. She's against children transitioning because she believes it's castration. If she could be wrong about it, she could be wrong about that, but she's still coming from a good place. See what I mean? Like, you're not arguing with somebody who thinks they should physically castrate children. She's concerned that's what's happening. That is very different than somebody saying they shouldn't exist, or they shouldn't be able to transition at all, or people don't live like that.
Or they shouldn't participate in women's sports.
Right. Well, and again, what's the standard? That's the reality. What's the standard? And if there's no standard, then you are simply leaving trans people up to to carry the weight of somebody who wants to pretend being trans just to fuck with women.
Right. And so the onus is on us to speak up and say.
I think that's more wrong. I think that's more wrong than somebody going, I'm concerned about someone who still has a penis in a women's shelter or in a bathroom because I was sexually assaulted, and they live with that. Like that, I'm not going to panic about somebody like that. I'm going to try to convince them. I'm going to try and move them, because they seem to be coming from a space of fear in some cases and concern, and not straight up like racist bigotry. We have branded bigotry to be like a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly.
And at the same time,
Exactly.
talking about the word like transphobia, well, if that's a real thing, if transphobia is a real thing, then that means these people have a medical condition. They have a phobia. It is an irrational fear, but it is a medically, like a phobia is a real thing. And if you're saying they are evil for having an illness, which is what that is, if it's a phobia, that's what it is. If they're evil for having an irrational fear, that's ableism. I don't know how else to put it. Maybe you were lucky to be raised in the right community. You don't have that fear because you were introduced at a young age and it doesn't scare you. Or maybe you were introduced at an early age and it did scare you, and that's why you have an issue with it. But if you're going to argue that these people are transphobic, homophobic, any of those things, then you're arguing they have a mental illness. And if you're saying a mental illness can make you evil, then that's a whole other conversation. I disagree. And I think there's a difference between the Charlie Kirks of the world who think that all trans people are perverts or mentally ill or both. Most of the time they think they're like pervy men, or that it's a fetish. And that, I would argue, is the evil side of that bigotry. And then there are some women who are just afraid that just as women are getting female-only spaces specific to their genitalia, men are coming to take those over again. It can be irrational, it can be wrong, but it's not coming from a point of fuck trans people and their existence. It comes from a point of fear. And that, however pathological, right? It can be a pathological fear, but you handle that person differently than you do the Charlie Kirk bigots of the world, in which case you just, mock the fuck out of them and this concern, that kind of shit, right? But it's different. It's you handle those things differently. And I would argue that we haven't been. We have been doing a one size fits all. We have equated a phobia about something, of an irrational fear, with bigotry, overlapped those two things and moved on. That the jargon overlapped and it didn't have, and therefore, how do you talk somebody off a ledge who really wants to jump versus somebody who is just doing it for show versus somebody who, it is up there going, oh no, I'm not actually doing this. My wallet's out on the ledge. It blew out the window and I'm trying to get it, right? Right? You know what I mean? Like those.
You got me. Anyway.
Right.
Hey,
see
everybody.
What I mean?
Yeah, no, this was a really interesting conversation this week that we just went there, and cool. That's why I love coming on your show every week, why I'm so grateful that you're here. And I feel incredibly, truthfully, I feel very lucky to be a part of this, especially now, because this is a very tough time for a lot of reasons. And there is a lot of shit going on, but we absolutely are going to need to keep leaning on each other like this to get through it, because every day is going to throw us some new shit. So, everybody.
Fearless advocacy, people. Fearless advocacy.
Sounds great to me. Please buy my book, The Sound of Settling, TaraDublinRocks.com. Sign up for my Substack at TaraDublin at Substack.com. Sign up for House Substack. Make sure you're also signed up for Political Voices Network. You're going to be hearing from more sexy liberal voices on that network. And we're going to be doing more shows, and we're going to be doing more stuff with Political Voices. So make sure you're there. Sign up for my YouTube. Play Tiny Dancer. Just go to my YouTube and play the Tiny Dancer. Put it in the background, listen to it, watch it. Do something that makes you feel good. The world needs more love. Just get some more love in your life. And support each other. And we'll be back here next Monday. And who knows what we'll be talking about. But one thing I would like you to do this week, besides supporting your friend Tara and your friend Hal, call Republicans in Congress and say you did not vote for Nazis to put their Nazi hands on your personal financial information, especially your tax returns. Musk is trying to get into the IRS today. That's fucking bullshit. So please, Republicans pay taxes allegedly. So MAGA people should want their tax returns too. Make those calls. Make your calls. And
the idea that he's
part of
only
not being passive.
Like as much as people are afraid he might be manipulating people by getting their information, and he could blackmail people on the left, as it were, and control them or make them fear. The people on the right that they're trying to keep in line, the rhinos, have more to fear from this kind of manipulation than we do, because they're going to.
Blackmail is a hell of a thing. That's how we got here. So
that's
pressure on Republicans, and there is a third impeachment coming that no one's talking about. So remember about that. We
That's right.
have the mechanisms in place to keep them in check between the courts and legal shit. And there is pushback from Democrats. We have to
Keep it
help
up.
keep pushing. Keep
Yep,
pushing.
fearless advocacy. All right,
Republicans.
awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Be good
Cheers.
to each other this week. Take care of
All
yourselves.
right, see you later. There she goes. Ladies and gentlemen, Tara Dublin, who does indeed rock. I feel like there's been a trend in this conversation. I think it has a lot to do with the Zizan thing that I was reading up on and stuff, and how, like, it just breaks my heart when people in a minority have to carry the weight of, like, posers and freaks taking advantage of the very narrow rights that they have, right? And it's never going to be, you know, especially when you're talking about like a self-identifying situation, where you're not going to have people trying to take advantage of it. And so in discussing those things, I think it's very important to be clear that when you're fighting for, you know, trans men and trans women to live in society with every right and privilege that everybody else should have, and at the same time, you can be aware of female spaces and female limitations and female circumstances that men take for granted, physical, biological men can take for granted. Those things matter. Those parts of the conversation matter. And you can have them without denigrating a group. Yeah? At least I can. I just hope you can too. And maybe, you know, over the course of this, if there's anything I can teach you, it's how to do that. Either by example or by the way I phrase things or whatever. Or maybe I just trigger something in you and you go, oh, okay, I see. All right, yeah, let me phrase this. I think I would do this instead. I would rather inspire you to find your own way in this situation, especially when it comes to communication about very serious issues, than you just repeat my, you know, how I say stuff, or how, because it's all hands on deck. Yeah. And at the very least, you're right, Fish Delight. I did teach you how to knock somebody out. It's true. But again, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of the 3-hit. I know I only did kind of like, you know, this straight shot to the solar plexus roundhouse, which is fairly standard. You can also do the double hits, which is like one to the solar plexus, one to the chin. That's the sort of straight punch. But I got to tell you, there's something to the shin kick, then hit, then roundhouse. So it's actually a 3-hit. And usually these two go at the same time. So you can't see my foot moving, but you want that foot coming up at the same time you're hitting the solar plexus, and then that comes. And just trust me on this. This is probably a bad way to end this conversation. Probably the exact opposite of how I need to do this. Probably. Love you guys. I'll see you this afternoon. Bye.